What's great with Lucky Orange for Shopify stores specifically is that their heat maps are dynamic. So you can also see if people are behaving differently on the menus. So if somebody opens your main menu, you can see where the button clicks are on that particular menu. So a really good tool. One of the easiest ways to screw up your Shopify stores is to have a lot of technical bugs and to have slow loading pages. And it's one of the highest value things that you can do is to just check the store that it is functioning on all of those devices. People are not going to come and contact your customer support with a screenshot like, hey, you have this bug.
Samuel is the founder of CRO Gurus, a Shopify expert agency helping direct-to-consumer e-commerce merchants maximize their sales from their current traffic. Samuel has been a consultant for some of Shopify's largest online stores with years of experience growing e-commerce stores. In this conversation, we dive deep into tactics, cool hacks, and secrets that Samuel uses in order to increase the conversion rates and lifetime value in the stores he optimizes. Some of the topics we covered were: how should the optimization approach differ between small and big companies? How to optimize your store even if you don't have a lot of traffic? Website speed optimization best practices? How to use Google Analytics custom alerts? How to use soft conversions in order to understand if your store is moving in the right direction? Shopify Checkout conversion killers? Email flows you must use in order to increase the lifetime value of your customers, and much more.
Welcome to the EcomXFactor podcast, where it's all about launching and scaling your business using sales funnels, automations, and smart marketing. And now, please welcome your host, the founder of EcomXFactor, Yaron Bin.
Hi Samuel, how are you?
I'm doing excellent. Great to be here.
Great to have you here, and I'm very excited and looking forward to this conversation. Before the conversation, I took a look in your excellent YouTube channel and I saw so many topics and I wanted to start picking your brain immediately. So I'm hoping that we'll cover a lot of interesting topics and tactics in this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always happy to nerd out, and YouTube channel for me is one of the places where I get to do that. So that's where I put my best content out there and my new findings out from the CRO world. So really happy to talk about that.
Cool. Yeah, I like nerding out as well. I like the getting into the tactics. This is something that I try to focus in the latest episodes. At the beginning, I felt that most of the episodes, they were interesting, but they were very high level. So now I prefer drilling deeper. So this is hopefully what we'll do today. So before we get started, can you share a bit about your background and what you're doing today and what you did in the past, your experience?
Yes. So these days I run my own agency called CRO Gurus. We do Shopify store optimization, mainly for 6 and 7 figure e-commerce store owners. So what we do is take stores that are already having traffic and aim to maximize their revenue they're getting per user. We do that optimization and then also setting up email flows with Klaviyo. And before that, I was running a Shopify expert agency where we put together Shopify stores, but increasingly more and more of them were struggling with their stores and asking for a conversion optimization. So from that point, we pivoted into running only CRO at this point.
Cool. And the majority of your stores, what are we talking about? Is it a specific vertical? What are the revenue they are generating on a monthly basis? Like, can you give us a broad idea?
Yes, sure. So most of the stores are in the 7 figures USD in sales per year. And really the verticals are any vertical you could pretty much imagine. But they are all direct-to-consumer Shopify stores. So that's our niche. We focus on helping those kind of customers. And also we have some of the smaller ones as well with big ambitions. So there's a lot of stores that are looking to make a big break. And for those, the strategies and tactics are, of course, a little bit different because they tend to have a package that is not quite as honed in yet versus somebody who's already there, gained traction in the 7-figure range. In sales per year. So with those, we get to keep it quite practical, and maybe you look into the best practices and what makes sense for those a little bit more and a little bit less on the data-driven side. But still an interesting challenge for those as well.
In your opinion, what is more challenging between like the small stores and the bigger stores?
Okay, yeah. From an agency perspective, the small stores are challenging because you have to provide more of a conversion uplift to make the CRO effort valuable. So there we are often quite limited. And actually, this is what I'm completely transparent to store owners as well. So if you are a smaller store owner, you should be aware that you are probably not going to be in a position where you can run multiple A/B tests per month and run a more of a research-driven, analytics-based CRO program. Rather, it is more about positioning, trying to align your store with the CRO best practices and doing what makes sense for your particular brand. Whereas with the big ones, your challenges tend to be that you already have a very good package. You're just trying to improve it by a few percentage points. And if you are in this position where, let's say, you are selling $1 million USD per year, then even a small increase can improve your results significantly. So a few percentage CRO improvement, for example, can mean that you can scale your Facebook ads by 30%. Like that's by no means unheard of. So it can have a little bit of a multiplier effect there, like in terms of how you can grow.
Let's focus for a second on the smaller companies. And you mentioned positioning, and I would like to hear what you mean by positioning, and if you can give a general division and distinction between the tools that are relevant for smaller stores. For example, what comes to my mind is usability test is more relevant to smaller stores because, and like, let's say market research is more relevant because they can't do the A/B test because they don't have enough traffic. So can you elaborate a bit about the tools that are just come in handy for the small store owners?
Yes. Okay. So the tools that I would recommend, main tools for small store owners, and probably you already have, as a small store owner, you have Google Analytics in place. That's the basic tool. You will not get away from that. It's a great tool to use in general. You should get very familiar with it, understand the different reports. Also, get a course or read blog posts about how to use segmentation within Google Analytics so that you are not just limited by the basic reports. The second tool I would recommend for smaller store owners is Lucky Orange. So this is a heat mapping tool similar to Hotjar, for example. But what's great with Lucky Orange for Shopify stores specifically is that their heat maps are dynamic. So you can also see if people are behaving differently on the menus. So if somebody opens your main menu, you can see where the button clicks are on that particular menu. So a really good tool. And even if you don't have a lot of traffic, you can still watch visitor recordings. So it can record the visitor screen, and then you can watch it backward, which takes time, but you need to use the data that you have, and that recording data is one of the fewest pieces of data that you have at that point. So definitely use it. The third tool I would recommend to use is GT Metrics. So it's in gtmetrics.com. This is a site speed tool, and you can take a look at your store from this perspective to check that it is loading quickly. So one of the easiest ways to screw up your Shopify stores is to have a lot of technical bugs and to have slow loading pages. So you can at least, like, even if your value proposition is not that honed, even if your product market fit is not perfect yet, you can make sure that your site is functioning, and it can be often a case where that functionality is required first before you can be really persuasive. So before you think of your very clever copywriting, just make sure that there's no technical issues.
Yeah, at least having like the minimum functionality. It's like the basics. fundamental. And so I was planning to talk about site optimization and website optimization, but you already mentioned this. So let's talk maybe a bit more about this, because I know that a lot of people are struggling. And I told you before we hopped on the interview, before we started recording, that in my opinion, in Shopify, I'm not sure how easy is it to optimize. I mean, image reduction, maybe reducing the apps, but what are more like best practices for reducing the page loading time?
Yes, so there's a common misconception that page loading times need to be very short. Mm-hmm. What you're really looking here is the experience for the end user. So actually, it doesn't really matter how long your pages take to load. If you have a long page and then that last little widget there takes a longer time to load, as long as the experience is smooth. So what you're looking to do here is optimize for your on-load time. And you can see this from GT metrics, for example. So you don't need to care about the full page load time, because oftentimes there might be like a Google Tag Manager or Google Analytics snippet there that takes a little bit longer. But for the end user, there's no difference there. With site speeds, typical suspects, like you mentioned, are apps for Shopify stores. But it can be also different things like using GIF images, for example. Shopify in general is excellent with site speeds because they have their own image formats and then also their servers. So as a Shopify merchant, you're already in a lot better of a position to have a fast store compared to many other WordPress store owners or Magento or other platforms. However, many Shopify store owners that start out, they often code it themselves or have a cheaper developer do it. And this can mean that the stores are not really optimally loaded. So there might be same assets loaded multiple times, or the code is in a way it's like looping out a little bit, or it's going to get assets that don't exist. So this is something that you want to check and preferably do it with another developer. It's a good little test, like what do you see here that could be optimized and how long it would take.
Can you elaborate about this? I think it's an important point that I not quite understood. So can you explain?
Yes, this is one of those things that I think as a store owner, you want to pick your battles. Now, out of the hundreds, possibly thousands or millions of things that you could focus on, if you try to master every single area, I think you're going to be screwed. The common saying that like jack of all trades, master of none. So yes, you want to pick like those areas where you would repeatedly do it. And store speed optimization, while it's good to understand the basics, is not going to be something that you would be repeatedly doing. It's good to get to that baseline good level, but then like at the end of the day, like you will have to have experts in some of these areas that you're just going to offload that work to. Otherwise, you are going to hit your ceiling and your life will become a living hell because your work fix will be $100 and your wife will hate you and you will never see it. So definitely seek out some technical help, especially in these kind of areas. And it's pretty easy to find Shopify developers these days. So I highly recommend that you at least get a few quotes on that. And oftentimes they will be happy to showcase you the first initial opportunities for free. So you'll get a pretty good idea of that.
Nice. This is a great tip. What about preloaders? This is something that I started considering using preloaders. I'm not talking about lazy loading, but like preloaders, because they also, in a way, improve the experience and they give like a more premium experience. I'm not sure. What did you test out the different preloaders, and what is your opinion about this in general?
There's a lot of these kind of apps, and I wouldn't say gimmicks because they can definitely help. But what you want to do is do a before and after test. And I think it's a case here, like we've tried a couple of these, and it seems to be a very case-by-case basis. So this is a common thread in CRO in general. There's very few always and very few nevers.
Yeah.
That would be always. So if you say like, this is always a good idea or this is never a good idea, most likely you are a little bit of a dumb person, in my view. So you want to test it on your own store and see how that works for you. But in general, we are talking about tiny improvements. So those tiny improvements can make a big difference for the bigger stores, but most likely they are not going to be very impactful for a smaller store. So if you are still on that smaller level, you are having a lot of different opportunities of what you could work on. I wouldn't start there generally. And if you are a little bit more advanced, this might be something that you want to look into.
Yeah, I find that my latest conversations are full of disclaimers because the people that I interview are data-driven, and you never want to give like a cookie-cutting advice. I get what you mean in this regards, the nevers and the always. And this leads me to another question, which I planned also to ask later, but this is relevant for the time being. So how do you prioritize growth? Because the preloader, for me, maybe when you said this, I thought, okay, why am I messing with the preloader? It's not the most important thing I can do at the moment. As you suggested, the preloader might be just a small tweak, but maybe you have such better and bigger opportunities. So how do you approach the prioritization of growth?
Yes, a good way is to have some kind of a prioritization framework and then just sticking to it. I found personally that the easiest prioritization framework is to just simply think of the ease and impact. So if you have opportunities, you can rank them from 1 to 5 in terms of ease and 1 to 5 in terms of impact. You can make an average of that or just combine them together and the highest number wins. Now, once you get those results, you need to stick to them because you have your favorites that are close to your heart, and you always want to let's do this. So you want to do that. Another good thing to think of what here is to do the more boring things first, because our brain has this reward mechanism that you want to do the dopamine-inducing things first, and by delaying gratification, you will often jump over your competition who are doing the fun things and maybe doing them a bit too many times and like too much focus on that. So those are my couple of tips there.
Great tips. I like the average of the impact and ease. Can you elaborate about what comes to mind when you say, okay, eating the frog? This is also some people say doing the hard things is eating the frog. So can you give an example of something that you did lately that you kind of feel that it was a boring thing to do, but it had a huge impact?
Yeah, I have a big belief that like your mornings need to suck. Not so much that you are afraid to go to sleep at night. They still need to be difficult. Yeah, in terms of doing the boring things, what we do, I don't do this personally, but what we do for the clients is that we get a bunch of devices. So mobile phones, tablets, etc. And then we walk through the site with those and just testing that these devices are not providing any bugs. Because we can look at it from our laptops and maybe from one phone, but that's just one experience. And it is really tedious and very boring, but the users, when they are coming to your store, they are usually 80%, 90% on mobile, and they will have very different mobile devices. So you have, generally you have Android and iPhone. So that's one division there. There's a ton of different resolutions in each device, as well as different browsers on each device. So what you get there is a ton of opportunities for your store to break in these different resolutions. And it's one of the highest value things that you can do is to just check the store that it is functioning on all of those devices. I hate to see Shopify stores in general because they're built into the themes, and those themes are not necessarily checked. They work on the Shopify theme store when the font size is this, the length of the text is this. But what happens when you add a couple of characters? Now, it might go a little bit off from the bottom side, and suddenly it looks very untrustworthy. And that will start eating away in your sales. So yeah, it's ties into that like low dopamine thing for sure. Like you will not enjoy it, but I'm sure like if you see the results, you will enjoy it later on. So
cool, sounds good. And what is the frequency of the instances that you see that there are bugs? Because let's say I test iOS versus Android. But is it common to see that also within the Android different operating system, you'll see bugs that are crucial?
Quite a bit. So a couple of general rules there. You don't need to check every single device, operating system, and version. What you can do is go to your Google Analytics, see which ones are the popular ones, and start from those. If you have are performing poorly. So where are the conversion rates low? And I never forget this myself when I first looked at my first big Shopify store. It's an 8-figure store, and they had 3 device types that were converting at 0% with thousands and thousands of visits. And then picking out those from the data, I was like, oh, it's like mind-blowing because it cost them so much money, but nobody knew about it. So there had been 50,000 visitors on that month for that store doing those devices. But people are not going to come and contact your customer support with a screenshot like, hey, you have this bug. Like, so you will need to go and find those out. But to circle back to that question, a general rule of thumb is that if it works on a smaller device, it will work with a bigger device. So just get one of those older, smaller ones. And then if it works on that, usually the store will work fine on the bigger one. So you don't need to waste a ton of time going through every single device.
Quick favor, guys. If you enjoy these shows and have been a listener for quite some time now, we would really appreciate it if you could take the time to give us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever your preferred podcast app may be. Having lots of ratings and audience feedback makes our show become more visible across multiple platforms. And it also supports our mission of helping as many people as possible to become better marketers and better entrepreneurs. So if you're not driving and it wouldn't be dangerous, pause this thing right now and give us an honest review over your podcast app. And we will love you even more than we already do. Thank you for taking the time, and I hope you enjoyed the show. This is also great advice. So when people normally, when they come to your CRO agency, what do you see very often, like misconception? What is their complaints very often, and are their complaints valid, or do you think they are not looking in the right direction normally?
Yeah, I think all the complaints are valid in a way that they do reveal people's perceptions. And oftentimes you see people's perceptions reflected on the store as well. There are definitely some common mistakes that store owners make. And I think it's a little bit of reflection of wanting to stand in the crowd, not out of it. So many store owners, they have these concepts of looking at Amazon or Walmart.com as the benchmarks, and then wanting to make their store aligned with that. However, there is a big difference there, because you can't really compete with these giant stores with their methods. So what store owners need to think of is how do they stand out in that sea of competition? And if you are thinking of a typical buyer, they always know that they can go to the Amazon store and get the same thing, and they're going to have a good experience. As a store owner, I think like the most common mistake is to just list your products and perhaps like tweak your banner headline a little bit and pretty much put it out there with like a standard looking theme, not really making it unique in any way. And then just because you drove traffic to it, you expect people to buy.
I wanted to ask you a bit about trends. What are you seeing these days? Do you feel that it's becoming more challenging, that CRO is becoming more important? Because a lot of people are complaining about the iOS update and the CPMs are becoming so high, and some social platforms their ads are underperforming. So a bit about trends and your view of e-commerce today and where is it heading to?
Oh, yes, that's a very good question. So a few years ago, we started to talk about machine learning. Everyone was talking about machine learning, and there's always these trends that every year there's supposed to be a breakthrough with some new thing, and everybody's talking about it. What we're seeing breakthroughs right now are mostly those things that were on the news like a few years ago, like blockchain might have been last year or a couple of years ago. That was really a trending thing. Now we do see that machine learning algorithms and algorithms in general are getting more powerful. And the number one thing that it affects right now is advertising. So we are increasingly able to say to Google and Facebook that I'm willing to pay a ROAS of 500%. So get me as many visitors as you can with that. And those algorithms are better and better at predicting whether this person is going to buy or not. Now, they got so good at it that iOS, for example, wanted to put a little bit of break to it. That this is getting a little creepy, perhaps, from their perspective. And now we have that kind of a little bit of a battle. Now, though with Facebook and Google, there's so much money behind it and so much incentive for them to serve the advertisers well, so that I'm sure that they will figure out around identifying users and going and improving their algorithms further. What this means for an e-commerce store owner then is that I think in the future, we're going to increasingly live in a world where having great Facebook ads or having great targeting on your Facebook ads or finding the right niche for your Facebook ads, etc., is not going to be a competitive advantage or huge competitive advantage. So what will happen is focus will eventually more and more shift into the customer experience and the storefront experience itself. I think of it in terms of this. Everyone's looking to find those like first-time buyers, going after them. But it is a lot easier to optimize for your repeat purchasers, taking care of your existing customers, also a lot cheaper. They tend to buy for a higher average order value and have a higher lifetime value in general, of course. And then by taking care of those people better and making sure that your actual customer experience is good, you will not need to bring in new people all the time with advertising, etc.
Interesting. And does your agency, can you share some wins in regards to improving the retention with some of the stores? Stores that underperformed with regards to lifetime value and things that you did in order to increase the lifetime value?
Yeah, so a couple of quick ideas there is if you don't, for example, already have a win-back campaign for your emails, this is a really good one. And a win-back campaign is one of those campaigns that you run from your email system when people are likely to churn. So if you look at it like an average customer would need to make their second order after 2 months, for example, you can then have an email sent at that time with perhaps a tiny discount eventually to help them get that back.
Yeah.
Another thing that you can do to improve retention is, and I'm a big fan of automated flows because they enable you to run your business without constantly doing more and more things.
High impact.
Yes, it's very definitely a very high impact. Like anything you can do once and it keeps working for you, is amazing. Like you definitely should do those things. So the next thing to help with the retention is to have just a simple flow when people buy, so that like when they are expecting the product, they will get to like build up that expectation a little bit. Because what happens is that you have that dopamine high when you buy the product, and then it flattens out, and then you just happen to get the product. Like you're not even like really excited about it anymore. So you want to keep that built up, and by that, like you create that kind of emotional memory in people's minds. And when they are then looking back at the experience, they remember this positive, long emotional cycle before getting the product and purchasing. And people want to experience that over and over again, ideally. So really helps retention. With these two flows only, you can see retention go up by 30 to 50%. Wow. It's crazy. Like, but so many store owners, they never do anything. Like you just set these two flows up, and we've seen this happen, like 30 to 50% more with customers, just by asking, just by building a little bit of a relationship. So
what would you write in the mail? Can you share a bit of even diving deeper? So let's say the customer bought until he got the product, let's say 7 days afterwards. So how many emails would you write in between, and what would you include in these emails?
Yes. So you want to see how people have behaved before. So if they have already gone through your welcome flow, you don't want to do that. But if they haven't, you can start introducing more of that. So they don't know about your brand that much yet, and they will definitely be interested in that because they just did business with you. So there, I would start with that. So you want to do an email from the store owner, like in a humble way, thank them for purchasing, like, and just remember, they could have gone to Amazon and bought something generic, but they bought from you, and now you get to have their attention because like right now they are the most attentive to your message since they just started a relationship. So first, like just a humble thank you, and then you can have a second email that, okay, while you wait your product, like here's something that might be interesting for you. So start with something like a how-to guide is a good idea, something related to the product, and these kind of things. It really depends on the industry, but oftentimes you can build out a little bit of a flow here. On the next email, and ideally you'd have this 1 day after, 3 days after, 5 days after, if you're going to get it in 7 days. On the next email, you can just say like, hey, a couple more days for your patients, really excited for you to try out our product. And you're going to like perhaps like experience it like this way. You can use like a little bit of a how-to guide there, what to expect, and those kind of things. Then maybe like 9 days later or so, like maybe make it a little bit longer actually, since you want to make sure that like your customer has already received the product, because it's going to be really bad if you say like, hey, how did you like the product if they haven't received it? But here you have an option to then include things like what they could additionally purchase. Here, like what could go well with that product. So it's a sort of an upsell without actually like being a in your face upsell. It's a helpful upsell.
Nice, awesome, cool. I also like before I offer the upsells, I also like segmenting them and maybe surveying the customers and seeing what most interests them and how did they enjoy the experience, and only afterwards maybe trying to upsell. But this is just how I do it. But this is a great flow. Before we finish, I want to ask you a few more tactical questions that I saw in your YouTube channel, and these are topics that I find a lot of interest in. So first of all, I saw that you have a video about Google Analytics customer alerts. I wanted to hear maybe also for my own knowledge and maybe for the listeners, how you utilize them and why they shouldn't be ignored. Because I know that most of the people don't even use them.
So customer alerts in Google Analytics, one of those old functionalities that people overlook for no good reason at all. It's, again, one of those things that you can set up once and it will keep running for you. So instead of you constantly needing to check your Google Analytics to make sure that things are still all right, you want to set up in Google Analytics, you can go to the settings and there will be custom alerts option. And with this one, you can set up either daily, weekly, or monthly alerts when some metric of your business is going up or down, either numerically or in like a percentage basis compared to the comparison period. So this with this one, you can, for example, set traffic, you can set conversion rate, and I believe you can also set revenue. If you do that, you can rest assured knowing that Google will alert you if something goes terribly bad, or perhaps like you get featured in news and like suddenly there's a ton of like traffic to your store. You'd want to know about that too. So with that, like you will just know where you are. So it's a great little system. Takes us a few minutes to set it up. We set it up for all of our clients because of this, and I highly recommend you to do it as well.
Yeah, this is very impactful and powerful. The only thing that I didn't like about it, that I don't like about the customer alerts, that I couldn't find a way to figure out alerts that are based on an hourly basis. And there was a period that I was running a lot of traffic, and Shopify wasn't consistent because they were updating. And a lot of times, I think it was like Black Friday, before Black Friday, or like 2 years ago. And sometimes the checkout would stop performing. So I created like an automated alert using Zapier and Twilio that called my phone. Even if it was in the middle of the night, it called my phone and told me if the conversion dropped. Because sometimes the conversion drops on an hourly basis, and if you're sending a lot of traffic, so you don't want even for 1 hour to drop, because one day is a lot of time if the checkout isn't functioning. So this is something that I also suggest doing, like maybe doing on an hourly basis, or at least every 3 hours. This is something that isn't out of the box in Google Analytics.
I agree.
And we all want to sleep better at night. Like you said, you can be rest assured that you'll know about every anomaly. So this is something I suggest people doing if they are spending a lot of money.
Yes, and even like 8-figure store of ours just had their PayPal account not work for a day. They lost a ton of money, but we had no way of knowing that. Those kind of things can be very tricky, and even if you have it one day after, like it's oftentimes it's of course nice to know, but like, you typically know already at that point that the alert came in. But for the majority of the people listening to the podcast, I think it's going to be a very, very good tool to use. Also, like as a Shopify store owner, most people are in a great position that they don't need to worry about their site going down permanently. Oftentimes, it's more like small issues with the checkout or payment gateways, etc. There's a whole industry of site monitoring tools for different platforms like WordPress, who are way more reliant on the servers.
And if you already mentioned the Shopify Checkout, so I know you also have a video about Shopify Checkout conversion killers. And one of my biggest, I don't know if it's a concern, but it's my complaint to Shopify, and this is why I also run a WooCommerce store, is the fact that if you don't have Shopify Plus, so you can't really do a lot of adjustments in Shopify Checkout. What are the conversion killers in Shopify, and how do you optimize the checkout, which is kind of out of the box checkout?
Yes, that's true. Like the number one things, and there's these things that anyone should do. And then there's like more like nerdy little tweaks here and there that you can do. Is definitely make sure that the colors of the checkout match the store. I've seen so many stores that have a pretty unique branding, etc. And then you go to the Shopify store checkout and it's the default, and nothing has changed. Make sure to add the logo. If you are selling a little bit of a higher ticket item, you should also edit your contact information to the logo. I know like it's a little bit annoying in terms of you can only do it that way, but that's a little hack there to include your contact information to the checkout that you can use. You should definitely have your policies there. One thing I do like about the Shopify checkout is that you can have your delivery terms there underneath in a nice little pop-up. So you can have a lot of information there without taking. And then lastly, I'd say like just look at the fields that you have. You don't want to have unnecessary fields that you're not even using. So if people are not buying as a company, only buying like personal items, then you can remove that. I'd say like that's around like 80 to 90% of what you can do with the Shopify checkout optimization itself. There are some ninja hacks, like you can add timers, etc., with the different apps even to the standard Shopify checkout. But it's more of salt to the steak, not the steak itself.
Exactly.
So I'd say like most store owners just focus on the basics. And one additional thing you can do if you have good shipping and delivery times is that you can modify your delivery method names. So just adding like DHL, for example, and then on the brackets, you can say like typically 5 to 7 days. So that way, when people choose the method, they can actually see how long it takes as well.
Cool. This is a great advice. And also I like using brackets also for like stating like most popular or best value, stuff like that. This is also surprisingly increases the conversion.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's like that principle where you just help people to decide. Like most people don't feel any particular way about like strongly about this product or that product. They just often just want to make the safe choice. So best value, most popular. Okay, am I value driven? My best value, yes, I'll take it. Or do I want to make a safe choice? Oh, most popular, yes, I'll take that one.
Exactly.
So yeah, it makes it really easy. And that's also one thing that store owners do overlook. Like they just list their products, but like even little tweaks like this do help people make a decision. So they are small things, but very valuable things for the visitor.
Exactly. And yeah, this connects me to like what you said, like ease and impact. So for example, only choosing, let's say I did a split test and I chose the default variation. The default variation was more expensive and the AOV went higher, but just because it was the default variation. So this is just another small example of not just listing the product, but giving a little bit of thought into how you list the product and what you choose as default. And if you have different sizing, so I have different sizing, so the sizing are not ordered by size, but they are ordered by popularity. And the default is already the most popular. So small tweaks can make a huge impact.
Oh, yes. Yeah, very easy categorization optimization. So optimizing your collection space in a Shopify store, just sort them by best selling. And you're already there. Like it's a very, very easy thing, but like most stores are actually like featured. Or of course, like if you have like a key ring there that's like really popular, you don't want to show it first because it's like a really low average order value item. But yeah, there's a lot of these like easy things that you can implement within just minutes and improve the results.
Cool, awesome. I can keep on talking about this stuff for hours, but the last question that I want to ask, the last question is if you can elaborate a bit about soft conversions and how do you use them, and all the rest of the question we'll keep for the next episode.
Okay. Yes. So in many cases, like if you are a store owner running a store, let's say like you're getting like less than 600 transactions a month, that's typically where I say like you cannot do A/B testing for hard conversions at that point, because then you get into a very statistically muddy waters. So it's just like very difficult to notify which variant or control is the better one. So you can focus on soft conversions and just try to improve them. They're not perfectly aligned with revenue always. So for example, you can have more add to carts on your product page and still have a lower conversion rate, but they do aligned oftentimes with that end goal as well of making more money. So good soft conversions to track and keep an eye on is your email signups. So how is this performing? This is also a good thing to test. So you can have different email pop-ups, different rules for those email pop-ups, and test those. Another thing is clicks to the products. So every single click to the product is also a soft conversion. It's a sign of interest. And there, like for example, if you have your front page, you have your value proposition, your explanation there, and you are tweaking that a little bit, you can look into that kind of metric, like, okay, is this actually a sign of interest? And in those kind of cases, you could look another soft metric combined with that. Bounce rate would be a good one to do that as well. And then another good soft metric is your cart abandonment rate. So you can optimize for that as well. So I think like those to me are the three biggest ones. If you just had to pick three soft metrics, you could focus on those and you'd be pretty well on your way to understanding the most important priorities you can pick.
Thank you so much, Samuel. We've covered a lot of topics, and I do have a lot of more questions, but I think we will pause here. I know that you are offering the listeners of the podcast a freebie. So can you elaborate a bit about the freebie and where can people hear more about you guys and what you guys are doing?
So there we put together a quick list of things that you can do as a store owner. There's a couple of hints here already on this episode. But if you want to have a printable, a PDF that you can just download, you can have that. And there's 10 store optimization things that you can do to easily get your Shopify store more aligned with the CRO best practices. And guarantee like it's going to make you money if you just implement these. So definitely worth your time and go and check it out. Then if you are more advanced, as a Shopify store owner, you're in the 7-figure range, you can always go and check us out at growgurus.com. For the rest of you, I highly recommend that you can just check out my YouTube channel. I put a ton of content out for free, try to make it as awesome and course-like as I can. I run my agency, so I don't sell information in a way. So like I have nothing to hide from you. So if you just search Samuel Larsen e-commerce from YouTube, you can go and check it out and see if you like that. So those are a couple of the ways to.
Also great. Yeah, and I vouch for your YouTube channel. I saw that there are a lot of YouTube channels that just share winning products and stuff that I don't really connect or relate to because it's already I don't consider it as valuable information, especially for more advanced. But your YouTube channel is full of gems, and I highly recommend people check it out. So that's it. Thank you so much. It was a lot of fun, a lot of valuable advice, and I'm sure people are supposed to get a lot of ideas and stuff that they can improve in their stores. I already have a few ideas of stuff that I would like to implement in my store, and thank you.
Hey, it was great to be a guest. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Hi guys, this is Yaron again. Just a few more things before you take off. Number one, if you want to learn more about e-commerce and marketing, make sure you check out our YouTube channel, which is called EcomXFactor Official. Number two, check out our Facebook group, which is called EcomXFactor Marketing and E-commerce Mastermind. This is a great place to ask questions and connect with other business owners. And last but not least, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to share it with your friends and colleagues, plus leave a review at your favorite podcast app.